Let's make my log cabin stained glass quilt pattern using a layer cake. Layer cakes are 10-inch squares, and for this pattern you will use one layer cake bundle to yield you a 45-inch by 52.5-inch quilt, or you can use 80 10-inch squares to create a 60-inch by 75-inch twin size quilt. This pattern is also perfect for directional prints, as you can see here in the cutting instructions. And with that said, pay close attention to how we will cut this, because any other way won't yield enough fabric. Also, a rotating mat will help out. First, you will cut on the top a 2.5-inch by 8-inch rectangle. Then on the left side, a 2.5-inch by 6-inch rectangle. Once again, on the top, a 2.5-inch by 6-inch rectangle. And lastly, a 2.5-inch by 4-inch rectangle. And you will be left with a 5-inch square. All of these measurements will be listed down below in the video's description, and go ahead and repeat this step to all of your 10-inch squares. Once everything is cut, we are going to take two 5-inch squares in mixed prints. On one of the 5-inch squares, flip it over to the wrong side and draw a 45-degree diagonal. Place them right sides together and sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of the line you just drew. Afterward, take a pair of fabric scissors or your rotary cutter and cut on that line you drew, leaving you with two 4.5-inch half square triangles. If they are not a perfect 4.5-inch square, do not trim them down right now, because I'm going to save you some time later on. With that said, with one of the half square triangles on the wrong side of the fabric, you will once again draw a 45-degree line from corner to corner, but in the opposite direction as your seam allowance. Then you will take those half square triangles and place them right sides together with the opposite print touching, and your diagonal seams will go in the same direction. You'll once again sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of the line you just drew. Afterward, take a pair of fabric scissors or a rotary cutter and cut on that line you drew, and you will be left with two 4-inch hourglass quilt blocks. Now is the time to trim your block down. It should end up slightly larger no matter what. And how to trim your block is to make sure all of your block's corners are on the 0 and 4-inch markings on your ruler. Smaller squared rulers do help out if you have one on hand, but all you do is line up those corners with each of the 45-degree diagonal points and trim the excess away. This method will have you trimming all four sides. Since we have two hourglass blocks already made, you will place one to the side for your second block, and we will continue creating the first quilt block. Now is the time we will start building that log cabin. So with a new print, we will sew the 2.5-inch by 4-inch rectangle to the left side of your hourglass. Then the 2.5-inch by 6-inch rectangle to the top of your unit. Then in another print, a 2.5-inch by 6-inch rectangle to the left side again, followed by the 2.5-inch by 8-inch rectangle to the top to complete a 8-inch quilt block. And that's it. It's a quick fun twist to a log cabin quilt block. All you have to do is repeat this step until all of your blocks are complete. Once all of your blocks are made, you're going to lay them out in a 6x7 block layout while rotating each block 90 degrees. Or you will lay them in a 8x10 block layout if you're creating the twin size quilt. Then, as always, sew your blocks together to form rows, and lastly, sew your rows together to complete your quilt top. And here is what my log cabin stained glass looks like all finished. For the backing, I am using this coordinating print from within the collection. Then for the thread choice, I am going with glide threads in the color Cantaloupe. And here is what my quilt looks like all quilted out. Once again, one layer cake bundle will yield a 45-inch by 52.5-inch quilt, or 80 10-inch squares will yield you a 60-inch by 75-inch twin size quilt, just to give you a few more options. Now I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.